Hey everybody, it's the Commodore from the Clan of the Grey Wolf, and you are watching the weekly Wringer series here on clanofthegraywolf.com. Now, I am back after another tumultuous week, more than a week. This has been probably the busiest I've been in a long time, so I apologize for the time between videos, but alas, I see, as it always is, when there is a little bit more time for you guys to bake on a particular issue, there are a lot of really cool and insightful things that come out of it. So I'm always happy to see that's happening as well. Plus, it's not like we didn't inundate you with content in between, which is a good thing. You know, it's always good to have more things to do here on clanofthegraywolf.com. So anyway, what are we going to do today? We're going to talk a little bit about, well actually, we're going to talk quite a bit. I'm not going to paint this in any kind of color that it shouldn't be painted in. We are going to talk a lot about Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So if you don't like PlayStation 1 and you don't like Castlevania, or you don't like the Metroidvania phenomenon, this is probably not going to be the video for you. But for all of you that are worthy fans of the Weekly Wringer and want to have a conversation about these kinds of things, stay tuned. We're going to talk a lot about it, because I asked you a question last week about how awesome Symphony of the Night actually is, and I'll get into some of the reasons and the answers, giving you also my own opinion, as I always do here in the Weekly Wringer. And then I want to ask you guys a question next week about fandom and about kind of some of the downsides of it. So stay tuned for that. That's what I'm going to open up for next week's question. Alright, so as always, I like to kind of kick things off with a welcome message to those of you that have commented for the first time in the Weekly Wringer. Perhaps you've been a part of the site for a while or watched a lot of videos but just decided to comment now, or perhaps, you know, this is your first time even seeing a video and you thought you'd enter into the conversation. Either way, we all love to have people coming into the Weekly Wringer. It's very important to have you on board. Comments keep the show going. So anytime I see new comments, I like to welcome people. I have two new people to welcome this week. Jules337. I tried to say that in every way I could do it with the EAT extension in LeetSpeak, as in Joule Seat, but it didn't work, so I'm just going to say Jules337. Welcome to you, Jules. In either case, welcome to you. Also, Brock Lobster. Thought that was a cool, clever idea. I don't know if you're a fan of the B-52s. I happen to be a fan of the B-52s, so I thought that was pretty cool. As soon as I saw your name, I kind of started busting out in B-52s songs, specifically Rock Lobster. And then I started to think about the Family Guy rendition with Peter and the guitar. Anyway, these are part of the useless ramblings of someone whose mind is clearly gone. I just wanted to welcome both of you. Thank you for being a part of the Weekly Wringer, and thank you for commenting and bringing your thoughts here, because I think that's a big important part of what we do. Alright, we got to get down to it, folks, because this is a big topic. I started a conversation last week that I hope will continue on for a long time, and that is, you know, I want to have a couple of videos that center around how awesome the things that we love really are. Celebrates the things that we all know and love. The things that most gamers take to be kind of an aw-duh kind of moment. Well, yeah, maybe it is that all of us kind of huddle around certain things that are great. But I want to ask the question, what makes them awesome? What makes them so great? Last week I did that for the first time, and I asked you all, for the very first time, why Castlevania Symphony of the Night for the PlayStation 1 is so awesome. And I got a lot of great conversations. Two thoughts right off the bat that I think dominated the conversation, or at least these were two veins that I picked out. First was that many of you argued that what makes this game good are the rose-colored glasses, right? It's our memory or our nostalgia of what this game was for us in our childhoods. And while it's impossible for me to probably limit my capability to speak about this, because I did play it during the latter part of my childhood, it was, you know, there's no question, my memory of it no doubt probably paints it in a little bit of a better light than maybe it should be painted in. That being said, I think it is still kind of a generalized rule that most people that know what they're talking about with video games, whether you count me as one of those people or not, would tell you right off the bat that Castlevania Symphony of the Night is one of the best games of the 90s for sure, and I think would tell you it's probably one of the best games of its generation. Whether or not they'd say it was the best game, one of the best games of all time, which I think is up for debate. And so there must be something magical about it. And I don't think it's necessarily that there's nostalgia to it, but we'll talk about this in a little bit. But many of you thought this was due to kind of a rose-colored glasses effect. Number two, I was really surprised to see how many of you haven't played this game. And this was a kind of continuing theme. Now it's like I kind of make it akin to something like, for example, Bruce Springsteen. I think Bruce Springsteen is a pivotal figure in American music. I appreciate and understand his work very well, and I think he is to be valued as an American musician, and especially in the evolution of rock and roll, what have you, right, as kind of the blue-collar representative in rock and roll. But I don't particularly like Bruce Springsteen's music, so I never really got into a ton of it, but I appreciate what he did. Several of you took that tack. You never played Castlevania Symphony of the Night, but you understand it's a very important game. It's one that people should understand and should recognize as a victory in video game design and creation, and therefore you know enough about it to be dangerous. So I was actually surprised about how many of you had not played it. And I will say this, which will be the last time I utter my own opinion before I get to the part where I talk about my own opinion, and that is, if you have not played this game, do yourself a favor and go play it. It won't take you long. It's very addictive. It will get you going very, very quickly, and you can be done with it in a very, very short amount of time. But I would highly, highly recommend playing this game. It's one of the games I think all of us should probably play at one particular point in time. Matter of fact, when I first wrote this question, the question that I was going to ask you was, when was the last time you played Castlevania Symphony of the Night? Because that's just how important this game is. It's a game that I think everyone should play. Alright, getting into your opinions now about why Castlevania Symphony of the Night is so awesome. The Bowtie Guy got us kicked off. Oh, by the way, I'm going to be taking a drink from a little bit of a different cup and beverage that I normally do today. I hope you don't mind. In any case, the Bowtie Guy got us started off by saying, you know, the Symphony of the Night sticks out as a great example of a truly rich experience that's a 2D platforming game in a sea of really awful, or at least really experimental, 3D games. This fact in and of itself is not disputed by me. I completely and totally agree with that. However, I don't think that has anything to do with what makes Castlevania... Okay, I think that has very little to do with what makes Castlevania Symphony of the Night so awesome. It goes back to the argument of memory and nostalgia. So the fact, I think Castlevania Symphony of the Night is so good that if you decontextualize it from all the games that were around it, whether they be a Castlevania game that were later to follow, or whether they be the kind of sea, the deluge of really crappy 3D games, as developers are really trying to figure out what to do with this space. And we're being forced to create content for the space, lest we forget. Which is one of the reasons Castlevania Symphony of the Night almost never was released. It was because companies were publishers forcing developers to create games that were in 3D because they wouldn't sell anything else, and they thought nothing else would sell. This game tended to be a tremendous surprise in that regard, which is one of the reasons why it's so revered. But I think that that's not what makes it awesome. It might be what makes it so revered, as I just said, but it's not necessarily what... If you take I think if you took Symphony of the Night, you pass it to someone who hasn't played a lot of games and who enjoys video games, they're going to really enjoy it very quickly. They're going to want it. It's going to be fun, and it's going to be a unique experience even to today. Go back and look at, you know, someone that has played only 3D games, came up in a PlayStation 2 era, and many of you have, as I've come to find out. If you sit down and play Symphony of the Night right now, I guarantee you will enjoy the hell out of it, and there are many, many reasons why. So my point is, I think if we take it right out of its context and just say, here is a game, play it, what do you think of this? I think most people will say this is great. Some of you will say it's impossible to make something timeless, and it's impossible to make something that is good even if you decontextualize it, and if Bowtie Guy, if that is your point, then it is well taken. But I would say that you know, there's something about the Beatles that make them always really good. You might not like the Beatles, but something is, you know, or you may not be the biggest fan of the Beatles, but you like something that the Beatles do, right? And that means that that even decontextualized, they are meaningful, wonderful, and fun to listen to, and great music. I think the same is true of Symphony of the Night, and I don't think it's a contextual argument or a memory argument or a rose-colored glasses argument. DTX 180 talked about a couple of elements that I'm going to highlight. By the way, guys, and this got brought up several times over the last couple of weeks. I read every single thing you guys put into it. What I have to do is I have to kind of boil things down into one thought. So I take everything that you've put there and I kind of boil it into one thought that I think is really interesting or something that's emblematic of your answer, and I kind of jump into it. So several of you mentioned a lot of different things that I'm going to get to in a little bit, maybe first, but it wasn't your main point. I always try to do that with the Weekly Ringer, so just so you know. Exploration is the big thing that kicks off DTX 180's point. That is that, this is a game, and I get the whole Metroidvania phenomenon, right? I understand how many people kind of lambaste this whole experience because of the fact that it is not, or that it's kind of not Castlevania. And then it becomes a kind of mixture of Metroid and Castlevania, and it becomes Metroidvania. And the exploration elements of that should be derivative of, therefore, the entire Metroid series. I couldn't disagree more, but I think the exploration is handled very, very well in this game. And the exploration being something that gives a newness to it, which is exactly what DTX 180 talks about. There's newness to every single environment that you come into. It's not the same old thing, even if the tasks that you're asked to accomplish are extremely similar. Kill this enemy, make sure you clear it, or don't clear it, just make sure you get to the next phase or room or save point or what have you, boss, to make sure that you can save it so that you have the rest of this castle to now explore. And then you can go back and you can actually master that particular part of the castle if you want to, or you can just breeze right through it. But in any case, there is newness, there's freshness to it. And I think this speaks, DTX 180's point, therefore, to me, is a testament to excellent level design, which I think is a staple of this game. And I think it is one of the things that make it stand out. It did a lot of cool things. First of all, it didn't completely eschew the idea of 3D. So there are some interesting 3D connections that are made within Symphony of the Night. For example, you have the books in the library, which kind of come alive and are this 3D enemy that you fight in two-dimensional space, right? You have little pieces, little bits and pieces of things that kind of come out and are 3D or move in 3D, even if they only move as 3D, as layered sprites. Because a lot of the bosses do that, for example. They are actually layered, three-dimensional layered sprites. But in any case, the idea that they kind of mix those things in there were really interesting, subtle touches with that I thought were really cool. For example, you're walking down a hallway and you see that there are multiple layers. There are kind of the background, as it were, and then there might be a window that's open, and then there are things that are interacting out beyond that window that move as well. So as you move, the perspective changes with it. That's a subtle thing. But it becomes such a part of the richness of the level design in Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And I think those little touches make it really enjoyable. All good points. Sonic Rose talked about the idea of variety, and I think this is if I'm forced at gunpoint to talk about the best elements, this is probably one of the first things I talk about. It's the idea that it really combines a lot of variety in how one plays this game. What I think you'll find is that if you watch three people play this game through the same stretch, whatever that stretch might be, it could be the first hour or 10 hours into the game, or however you might be able to beat the game faster than that. But the point is, if you watch people play it through the same exact spot, what you're going to see is multiple different ways to play every single thing. You might see someone that decides, hey, you know what, this whole idea of weaponry, I've gotten strong enough, I don't need to use the weapons, I'm just going to use magic from this point forward. And I'm going to use my spells to try to beat every enemy on stage, right? It's psychotic, it's very difficult, but it can be done, right? So, you can go to that extreme, or you don't have to go to that extreme. As Sonic Rose pointed out, you want to get the nunchucks and you want to try to go beat people up with that, even though they're not the highest attack weapon you have. Or if you want to kind of min-max the crap out